how can people prepare uh, spiritually, psychologically, but also physically for the upcoming times? What can you say about that? Maybe I think it's definitely a good time to own a piece of land, to move a little bit out of the city, to have a farmland, to be more self-sufficient. Also, of course, take care of yourself mentally, psychologically, but the most important, of course, is spiritually. Can you say a little bit more about that?
Well, you just basically touched on the three levels, if you want to go with mind, body, and spirit on this one. On the body level, as you mentioned, it's good to, if you can, find a community of people, of like-minded people that are both physically and spiritually tuned in to the earth, and that can find the right place to grow food and build inexpensive houses. Some places are doing tiny homes, and other places are. We have a community here in Mexico with about 40 people. We don't have a lot of growing space, so that's something we're looking for, is land to grow food on. But we're sort of loosely based on the Course in Miracles and the teachings of Yogananda and Ramana Maharshi and others. And we're in a Mexican town. We're in the middle of a Mexican town, so it's more like a co-housing kind of thing. And but I think it's good to be in a country that's more or less neutral. Mexico is, yes, they have a drug problem and they have drug cartels that basically run the government, but they leave everyday people alone. They don't invade into people's privacy the way the country just to the north of Mexico does. And so when you're looking for a place, you want something that's going to be relatively unaffected. Maybe some of the rural parts of Croatia or Serbia, where there's less government interference.
Bosnia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, I think is the
right,
most
and then
wild.
you probably heard about that tiny little country that they're forming on the border between Serbia and Croatia, a Liberland,
Yeah,
it's called. Yeah, and
yeah.
that's the right idea. They don't have enough land to do very much there, but it's only 7 square kilometers, I think. But and Croatia was giving them a hard time, and Serbia said, "Let them do whatever they want. We don't care." But Croatia was giving them a hard time, and finally Croatia said, "I'll let them do it. It's only 7 square kilometers." But you want to find a place where you'd have as little government influence as possible. And so, generally, that's going to be in a place that doesn't have a lot of natural resources, because then, big corporations are going to be after the oil or gas or whatever's under the soil. And of course, you want a place that doesn't have a lot of pesticides and
Yes.
herbicide use, where there's not a lot of genetically modified crops and things like that. So you really want to find and there are a few places that are relatively unaffected. Parts of Croatia and Serbia that I could mention, well, let's say southeast of Zagreb and east of Belgrade. Those regions that are relatively unspoiled. They haven't used a lot of poisons in the soil and stuff like that. The biggest part of community, though, is the egos of the people involved. You can have
Yeah.
a great piece of land, you can have houses and farms and everything, but if you don't get along with each other, it's not going to work too well. So you have to deal with the ego issues, and this is where the psychology comes in. And so the biggest thing is we have to deal with our egos, our human egos. The ego believes it's lacking and limited, and it needs approval and support from outside of itself in order to feel good. And so it's constantly trying to get approval from others or trying to control others. Well, if I can't get what I want, then I'll try and force people to give me what I want, that whole mentality. And for many of us, we're very refined. We've refined our egos now that they're not, acting like a Neanderthal or something like that. But nevertheless, we all still have egos, and we have to acknowledge that we have egos and that they're necessary to communicate with other human beings. But the idea is to become bigger than our ego, to transcend the ego, become the higher self, what we call the higher self, which is this vast, creative, intelligent, spiritual being. And here we have the little human ego self contained within this larger spiritual self. And this is the perspective we have to gain in order to get through the earth changes, basically. And it comes back to the topic we were discussing before we began the podcast, which was on the subject of inner authority. That we all have an inner authority, God within, and that is the only true authority. And so this huge lesson humanity's learning painfully for many is that just because somebody has a white lab coat on or a black robe or a suit and tie doesn't mean they know what's best for us, and this may be basic to most of the watchers of this show, but to the average person, it's like it was a big revelation that they said that the thing that we're not allowed to mention on certain networks was safe and effective.
Very safe, very effective. Yes.
And that's just one example. If you really go deep into it, you see that it's all propaganda. 90% of all news is propaganda. Somebody's point of view wants to be put, and that's propaganda. So this is a basic level of awakening, but it is a level of awakening, and it's good to acknowledge that there are a lot of souls awakening to the fact that, hey, we can't blindly trust somebody because they're wearing a priest's robe or a doctor's jacket or whatever, or a pinstripe suit or whatever. So I think that this is painful. It's called disillusionment, which is one of my favorite English words, which means the giving up of illusions. In this case, the illusion that government's going to keep us safe, or the medical industry is going to keep us safe, or whoever. And so this is a big, on the psychological level, this is really the lesson that we're learning as a species right now. That, there is a true authority and it's within us. And our number one priority is to contact our higher selves, to contact that inner authority. And that's what 90% of my work is about: the timeline healing, the soul integration work, all of the different projects, programs that I'm involved in are all designed to get us to awaken to our higher self that knows what's good for us and doesn't need some government telling us about a food pyramid or something and how we need this much of this and this much of that, when the body is going to tell me what I really need. And if I need this type of food, I'll eat this type of food. But I'm going to listen to the higher self speaking through the body. And, there's a real simple example of this that people can try for themselves. It's the muscle testing or biokinesiology. A strong arm is a yes, a weak arm is a no. Or a strong link is a yes and a weak link is a no. And people can, say, do I need more potassium in my diet? Yes or no? Things like that. And, so you can learn this. It doesn't cost thousands of dollars or 6-year PhD degree or something to learn this. You can do it very simply. You start tuning in every time you have a decision to make. Ask your higher self, give me a sign in my body. Maybe a warm feeling in the chest is a yes, and a cold shiver down the spine is a no. Should I invest in crypto? Yes or no? And then listen for an answer. Things like that. And so this is part of what's really going to make a difference for people in their lives, is the ability to hear that still small voice within. No, it doesn't yell at us like the ego yells at us. The still small voice doesn't yell. It speaks calmly and clearly. So we have to be able to quiet our mind enough to listen to it. That's why meditation is so important.